Did you know that Mexico is officially known as the United Mexican States? Well, now you know, and that is one of many things that you are going to learn in this video. Hey, I'm Lexi Limitless. I'm an accredited travel agent and the youngest person to travel to every country. Our world is an amazing place just waiting for you to explore, and I want to help. I'm here to teach you the major things you need to know before you go. In this series, we're covering every country in order from most visited to least visited. And because nobody likes taking notes, I even have a free tip sheet in the description ready to go for you. But now, ladies and gentlemen, please put your seat back and tray table in the upright and locked position, because we're taking off for the best travel tips and places of every country. Let's dive into a country known for their rich history, beaches, and authentic cuisine that I still dream about. Last year, Mexico had about 18 million international tourists, making it the 7th most internationally visited country in the world. Let's kick it off with some of my memories from Mexico. I have an interesting and somewhat unpopular opinion when it comes to visiting Tulum, which happens to be one of the most popular places that you'll ever see on social media when it comes to visiting Mexico. When I visited at the end of 2021, I went for New Year's and was shocked to order 2 tacos and some drinks as an appetizer at a restaurant, and it was $60 US. It's basically gotten to the point where Tulum is more expensive than Los Angeles. When visiting Mexico, you'll often look for cheap fun, but it has become so popular there that it just isn't what it used to be as far as affordability. I would also say that Playa del Carmen and Cancun are also still amazing, but it has become so oversaturated with tourists that the prices have gone up accordingly. My favorite experience that I had in all of Mexico was in Mexico City. It's one of the most lush cities I've ever visited. I also had hands down some of the best tacos I've ever had. In Mexico City, you can eat as many tacos as you want and struggle to spend even $5. There's also a lot to do on the coast. During my visit to Baja, I took a road trip which was a bit more rustic and adventurous, and I even learned how to surf there. So in essence, you can skip visiting Tulum and check out Baja instead. For a nice cultural experience, don't skip Mexico City. Before you can enjoy Mexico for yourself, it's important to know the basics. The land. Mexico is the 3rd largest country in North America, and it shares a border with 3 countries. The United States in the north, and Guatemala and Belize in the south. As for water, Mexico has the Gulf of California and the Pacific Ocean in the west, the Gulf of Mexico in the east, and the Caribbean Sea in the southwest. Mexican terrain is a mix of mountains, tropical beaches, volcanoes, canyons, and deserts in the middle of the country, and rainforests in the southern and eastern corners. Honestly, you could experience almost every type of terrain in this single country. As for the most visited destination, the capital, Mexico City, also happens to be one of the busiest cities in the world. For planning, you should know that Mexico City International Airport, Cancun International Airport, and Guadalajara International Airports are some of the busiest and most popular airports to fly into. The people. In Mexico, about 98% of its citizens speak the official language of Spanish. Outside of Spanish, there are over 60 indigenous languages spoken throughout the country. Of these other languages, there are well over 300 dialects. Since there is such a variety of languages spoken throughout the country, don't expect to always get by with your high school Spanish. As for religion, over 80% of Mexicans practice Catholicism, which is the most popular religion in the country. After that, Mexicans practice Protestant Christianity, while under 5% don't follow any religion. When planning your trip, you should know that the middle of the country is the most populated, which also means that it's the most touristy. If you want to explore Mexico and miss all the crowds, head towards the south and east for your best bet. The weather. Mexico is situated south of the Tropic of Cancer, which makes the temperature fluctuations throughout the year relatively minimal. But don't take this to mean that the weather will always be hot and dry. In the west, you can expect temperatures of about 77 degrees Fahrenheit, while in the north, the deserts of Sonora and Saskatchewan, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right, the summertime temperatures can consistently reach 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The weather above the Tropic of Cancer receives minimal rainfall throughout the year, while the Yucatán Peninsula and the southeast of the country are humid and wet rainforests. When you're planning your trip, don't let the rainy season from May through October stop you. Even though you might get caught in an afternoon shower, the lush green environment is almost more beautiful than the Mexican desert. Keep in mind that Mexico can experience natural disasters like hurricanes from June to November and even an unexpected volcanic eruption. Now that you have an overview of what Mexico is like, let's jump into what you need to know before you go. As a traveler, you can never truly know everything before you arrive in a new place, and you'll always run into at least a few surprises, so it's important to do your own research. But I want to at least get you up to speed on the most important things to know, so that you have a solid foundation for your trip, starting with visas. For US citizens, you don't need a visa to enter Mexico. Yay! But if you plan to work or study in Mexico, then you will need to apply for a visa. Mexico does require many countries to obtain visas before entering, so if you're from outside of the US, please do your research to make sure you have what you need before arriving. Money and budget. I've put together several budgets with how much you can expect to pay per day during your trip in Mexico. These prices can vary a lot, especially in big cities, top tourist destinations, and the time of year that you visit. In this guide, these numbers include accommodation, food, transportation, and activities for one person. For all the dedicated backpackers out there, you can expect to get by in Mexico for anything between $5 and $40 per day. For a more comfortable experience, you'll pay about $40 to $70 per day. And if you want to upgrade your trip to Mexico to luxury status, you can expect to pay a minimum of $150 per day. Mexico's currency is called the peso. Cash is still used throughout the country, especially on buses and at some restaurants. So you can't go wrong bringing more cash than you'll think you'll need. While major credit cards are accepted in Mexico, most businesses still prefer cash. I recommend bringing at least $200 so that you can store that in separate places, just in case anything, gets stolen or lost. Some places in Mexico do accept US dollars, but don't expect this to be the case at most restaurants or tourist attractions. You should be able to find pesos at any major bank in the US. However, it's always a good idea to call ahead if you're going to do that, just to make sure that they have some readily available to you. If you don't exchange money before your trip, you can do so at banks and ATMs in Mexico. Before you spend all of your money digging into another plate of tacos, make sure to download a currency converter app to use offline and check current conversion rates. We're taking a quick break from talking about budget while traveling to thank the sponsor of this episode of the Every Country series, Masterworks. If you're looking for unique ways to finance your travels, then listen up. Many travelers, myself included, know that the key is having your money working for you, even while you're on the road. A side hustle or a remote job, maybe even a YouTube channel. But whatever your plan, today's sponsor, Masterworks, may be able to help. I first talked about them last year, and so far they've handed back the net proceeds of $45 million in sales, investing in one of the most unique assets: fine art. Multi-million-dollar artwork you'd see in museums, from Picasso to Monet to Banksy. While this art was once exclusive to only millionaires, Masterworks has opened the market so you don't need art expertise or millions in your bank account. The process is simple. They help you pick shares in certain artworks that they've acquired. Once they sell those paintings, you get your share of the potential profit. Thousands have already seen returns. And in fact, every of their 13 sales have handed back a profit. So it's no surprise that Masterworks has 700,000 plus users already, and the waitlist is growing. But you can skip the wait immediately when you use the link in my description for VIP access. Now, let's jump back into planning your travels in Mexico. Cultural customs. If you have ever been to Mexico, then you know everyone is incredibly welcoming. For example, they don't skimp on greetings. When you're greeting someone for the first time, it's common to learn everyone's name and offer hugs and handshakes, both at the beginning of the meeting and when you're leaving. During the process, it's also common to kiss the left side of the cheek. It's also important to know that Mexicans aren't always the most punctual people. If you find yourself waiting for someone, know that it's probably not on purpose, it's just their way of life. If you get lost on your trip and you ask a local for directions and they don't know where it is, they most likely will not be telling you that. Instead, they'll offer you directions to somewhere up the street. I mean, it's a 50-50 shot that you'll find where you're going, so before your trip, make sure to download offline maps to help you navigate. I cannot talk about Mexico without mentioning the food. From chilaquiles to tacos al pastor to hot churros and tamales, food plays a huge part of Mexican culture. Although the variety of food changes from region to region, it's all based on corn, beans, squash, and rice. I highly recommend asking a local where their favorite restaurants are so that you can enjoy a true Mexican taste of their cuisine. I doubt they'd give you false directions to that destination. Another major part of Mexican culture is the arts. It's here that you'll find vibrant paintings, handcrafted jewelry, mariachi bands, and a history of famous artists and authors. You can observe just about any of these art forms during one of the country's many celebrations. Keep in mind that the majority of Mexican festivals fall on days that are tied to important religious holidays. During your visit to Mexico, to blend in like a local, you should only pack clothes that are free of rips and fit you correctly. You can leave your oversized sweatshirts, athleisure, and ripped jeans at home. Although the Mexican style is pretty casual, dressing in smart attire won't make you stick out as a tourist. Especially in smaller cities, dressing modestly is appreciated. Language. Even though Mexico shares a close border with the US, where English is widely spoken, only about 12% of Mexicans speak English. You're more likely to find English speakers towards border towns, in larger cities, and at tourist destinations. If your trip includes visiting rural areas of Mexico, it's likely that you won't find any English speakers. Since 2003, the Mexican government has acknowledged the use of the country's main indigenous languages just as much as the main Spanish language. Since there are so many dialects across Mexico, that means that it's possible locals won't understand the Spanish that you know. Make sure to have Google Translate downloaded offline so that you can read directions and restaurant menus when you're exploring. Although being able to speak Spanish will make your trip a little easier, it's not necessarily essential. But it's always appreciated if you take the time to learn a few key Spanish words and phrases such as hello, hola, where is the bathroom, ¿dónde está el baño, please, por favor, thank you, gracias, and goodbye, adios. Water. In general, tap water is not safe to drink in Mexico. Locals opt for bottled water, which you can pick up at just about anywhere from grocery stores to restaurants to convenience stores. Cell phone and internet. For cell phone service and internet during your trip, I recommend you start by checking with your own phone carrier for an international travel package that may be in your budget. Another option is to purchase a Mexican SIM card, which allows you to use the local cellular data while on your trip. Before your trip, you can purchase SIM cards from major Mexican cell phone carriers such as AT&T, Movistar, and Telcel. Once you land, you can find SIM cards at the airport, malls, and official carrier stores. As for coverage, you can expect 5G coverage in large cities, but coverage quickly drops as you move into rural areas. If you plan on exploring multiple areas throughout the country, I recommend downloading offline maps. Transportation. For the easiest way to get around, you can't go wrong with the buses. Most cities have major bus terminals where you can find options for long-distance trips. They're also quite affordable. Taxis are also widely available with ride-sharing apps like Uber and Cabify, which are available in mostly big cities. Have you ever heard of a colectivo, combi, minibus, or even a pesado? Well, these transportation options have routes across cities and are best for short trips. You'll know if this vehicle is accepting passengers if it has a sign on the windshield. When you need to get somewhere fast and cheap, this might be your best bet. The great news is that driving in Mexico is safe, which gives you more flexibility. You don't need an international driver's license, just a license from your home country to rent a car or a motorcycle or moped. If you do rent a car, you will have to purchase Mexican motor insurance, which can be done online or with the car rental agency. As for trains, you won't have much luck in Mexico. except there is the Ferrocarril Chihuahua Pacifico line. You can check it out in text right here. It's a traditional passenger train and passes throughout sweeping views of the mountains and the Mexican countryside. Outlets and converters. In Mexico, you'll use type A and B sockets. Mexico also has an average of 127 volts of power. This voltage is lower than many parts of the world, so make sure that your device can handle it. I also recommend traveling with a voltage converter to keep your device's battery life healthy and a universal adapter so that your chargers can fit in the right outlets wherever you're traveling. Safety. Wherever you travel, always use common sense. Especially if you're traveling alone, make sure to share your itinerary with your loved ones and know where to find your embassy. For US citizens, you can find the embassy in Mexico City. Petty crimes and scams are prevalent in Mexico, with tourists being targeted in large cities. If you're planning to travel to different areas in Mexico, please do your research as some are much safer than others. Solo female travelers can have an amazing experience in Mexico. I will say that I wouldn't necessarily recommend Mexico as a destination for a first-time solo female traveler, as it's not the safest for women to travel alone in certain states. This is another great time to remind you to do your research before you book any part of your trip or activities. If you do go to Mexico alone as a female, just remember to mainly explore during the daylight and avoid getting intoxicated. Accommodation. There is just about every type of accommodation option available in Mexico. From luxury resorts to hostels for backpackers, you're bound to find something in your price range. On the coast and in larger cities, accommodation options will be the most expensive. The average price for a hotel in Mexico can range anywhere from $30 to $150 US. For a budget hotel, you can expect to pay anywhere from $80 to $150 a night, while a mid-range hotel will cost you about $200 to $250 per night. For a luxury accommodation option, you can expect to pay anywhere from $600 to $1,000 or more per night. Hostels are also a great option for budget or solo travelers. In Mexico, hostels will cost you anywhere from $10 to $30 per night. Accommodation options can vary greatly depending on the time of year that you visit, so keep that in mind when you're booking a place to stay. Of course, don't book anything without reading the reviews. You can check out TripAdvisor for this and book the accommodation portion of your trip on Booking.com, Hostelworld, Hotels.com, or Expedia. Now that you've got all of the basics down, here are a few experiences in Mexico that you can't miss. I've curated some of the best information about this country from not only my own personal experiences, but also from those of locals and other travel experts to bring you the experiences that, in my opinion, you won't want to miss. Now, if you're from here or if you've been here and you feel like there's something that I've missed or something that I've overhyped, please feel free to share in the comments. I want everyone in the Limitless Army to learn from each other's experiences, so I look forward to reading what you have to say in the comments. But for now, let's get started with visiting ancient ruins. Whether you're visiting a pyramid or an ancient city, there's an endless amount of ruins to explore in Mexico. At Chichen Itza, you can explore Mayan ruins, while at Teotihuacan, definitely not saying that one right, you can explore a city that's about 2,000 years old. I always recommend visiting tourist destinations like this as early in the day as possible, or conversely, as late in the afternoon as they are open. That way you can experience this place while avoiding the crowds and also beating the heat. Some popular ruin sites are closely located to large cities, which makes them easy to explore in a single day. No matter where you're visiting in Mexico, you probably won't be too far from some of these ancient sites. I recommend deciding where to visit and then picking a few ruins to see that are in the area. If you haven't rented a car, there are tours and buses that can take you to some of these incredible sites from large cities. Celebrate Dia de los Muertos in Mexico City. One of the most exciting days to be in Mexico, and especially Mexico City, is November 2nd, the Day of the Dead. This holiday is a beautiful way to remember those who have passed and invite their spirits to be present during the course of the days-long celebration. Mexico City celebrations are big and colorful. You'll find different types of foods, parades, locals dressed up as skeletons, and iconic painted skulls. The festivities begin way before November 2nd, so in late October you can head to Mexico City to catch a parade, observe special events held at the cemeteries, and check out intricate altars locals have made in honor of their loved ones. The festival is one of the biggest and best ways to dive into Mexican culture. You'll be amazed by the colors, artworks, and offerings locals have created for these special days. Explore the cenotes in the Yucatán Peninsula. You've probably heard of the Yucatán Peninsula, but did you know that there are thousands of cenotes there? Scattered throughout the peninsula, you'll find these cenotes to be filled with green and blue water that features hanging greenery draping down into the water. The best part is that a lot of these cenotes haven't been overrun yet by tourists. So for a memorable experience, you can experience a day exploring these secret caves in Mexico. Since some of these cenotes have spiritual significance, you'll need to check if swimming is allowed at each location. If you have a camera, bring it. Even if you can't jump into the landscape, the photography alone will be worth a visit. Also in the area is Ria Secreto, which I think is one of the most underrated activities in Mexico. Here you can explore deep in the caves covered in stalactites and stalagmites that look like they are made out of crystal. The best way to experience this is on a guided tour or by hiking or swimming. It is such a unique way to look back in time and witness millions of years of natural beauty. You are now prepared to explore Mexico on your own. If you would like more weekly content as well as a PDF printout with all of this information for your travels, sign up for my newsletter and check out the PDF link in the description below. You can subscribe for the newsletter at lexilimitless.com/newsletter. Also, if you are a local from here, leave a comment letting me know if I missed anything or if there's anything else that you would want the Limitless Army to know about your country. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, let's push our limits.